What's up, everybody? Let's talk about the Jaylen Waddle trade that just went down here on Tuesday. And we're going to talk about it from a dynasty fantasy football perspective. We'll have redraft value built in as well. But we're going to talk about the impacts for the Broncos players, for the Dolphins players, for Waddle himself. Talk about maybe draft pick value if you wanted to trade away Jaylen Waddle, if you wanted to trade for him. We'll go over all of it. We'll walk through it. And if you have any questions after the video, definitely comment them below, please. And this is a brand new channel, so please subscribe, give it a like. We're going to have a lot of fantasy football content over here, a lot of extra time on my hands. So my plan is to really dedicate a lot of time to this channel and try to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark before the season. Let me know if there's specific content you want to see over on this channel, specific stuff you want. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed or seen Flurry Sports before over on the other channel on flurrysports.org, definitely give it a look. If you're brand new to me, I've been doing fantasy football for quite a while. I've been a content creator for about a decade now, and ranking highly, doing all that stuff. So if you have any questions about anything, I can certainly help you out. But let's get into the Jaylen Waddle trade. So kind of a surprising one, I would say. Not necessarily surprising that the Dolphins would trade away Waddle, right? It's a fire sale, new coach, new regime, new everything over there. So, they're trying to get their guys in the building. They're trying to clear cap. They're trying to build a team that is somewhat respectable. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do in Miami. The Dolphins got the Broncos' first-round pick this year, which is 30th overall, not a great pick. They got the third-round and fourth-round picks for the Broncos. The Broncos get Jaylen Waddle, and they get the Dolphins' fourth-round pick. So they get Waddle, and they get a fourth-round upgrade there. And they give up what is a very late first-round pick, a pick that everyone in the first round in that range is trying to trade out of the first round for the most part. And then a third-round pick. So not the strongest draft coming up either. I would say the Broncos definitely got a win here. Jaylen Waddle, we'll look in a second. I believe he's 27 still. So pretty young, a lot of game ahead of him. And now he's on a competent team. And now everyone's like, what the hell do we make of Troy Franklin? What do we do with Pat Bryant? All of the above. And we'll get into that. But let's just take a look at where some of these guys ranked last year. PPR leagues. Let's go through 17 weeks. No one's playing in week 18. So Courtland Sutton was wide receiver 10 last year, and I would assume any Courtland Sutton fantasy owner would be surprised by that ranking. He had a lot of bad weeks. He was inconsistent for a while. And, look at the stretch in the middle of the season. He had 10, 10, 5, 10 bye. He hurt a lot of people in the middle down the stretch. But then he had a couple big performances before the fantasy football championship, putting up a stinker there. But he was wide receiver 10. And Jaylen Waddle was wide receiver 19. And again, this was on a bad football team. He started the season kind of slow, but, becoming the only show in town without Tyreek, he got some bigger numbers. But quarterback position was a big question mark at best in Miami. Overall offense was a question mark at best, other than Achane. So he goes to a better offense, but target share, I can only assume, will be a bit less than it was. A little surprising that the Broncos didn't give up any of their wide receivers in this trade, but that makes me feel like there's another move for the Denver Broncos coming, because taking a look at this, they got a lot of guys, man. They got Courtland Sutton's obviously been the wide receiver 1 there. Now Jaylen Waddle comes in. Is he the wide receiver 1? Even with Sutton, probably. But yeah, so Jaylen Waddle's here now. They still have Marvin Mims, towards the end of a contract, I do believe. We got Troy Franklin, only 23 years old. A lot of potential there, a lot of hype surrounding Troy Franklin. He had definitely shown some flashes this past season. People really liked him. And then Pat Bryant, the rookie from last year, obviously going into his second season. Sean Payton loves this dude. He's a good receiver, but he's a very, very good blocker. So just because of that, there's no way he comes off the field, or at least he's going to see a healthy share of snaps because of how well he can block. Troy Franklin, goes back to the college days with Bo Nix. Andy showed some good flashes. Both of these guys are 23 years old. If I'm the Broncos and I'm looking to give up somebody, maybe they trade Marvin Mims, but honestly, Courtland Sutton could be out the door. Very interesting situation there. Not necessarily a Sean Payton guy. I don't think Sean Payton dislikes him, and he has performed very well. Like I just said, he was wide receiver 10 last year, and he was very good the year before that as well. They may just be looking to stock up for 1 year, try to go all in, win a Super Bowl. The more talent you can have in the receiving room, the better. At some point, someone's going to get hurt. Or if you make it to the trade deadline and everyone's healthy, you could probably trade one of these guys for someone good. That would be the worst case scenario for fantasy football owners, just because I think they will all eat into each other. This comes off the back of bringing back J.K. Dobbins, so R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins. Similar roles, similar split there. J.K. Dobbins is going to be the early down guy, and R.J. Harvey will earn his role yet again. And then tight end, man. They still have Evan Engram. They're rumored to be targeting a tight end in the draft. We shall see. I don't know if that's necessarily feasible. They still have blocking tight ends to go along with Evan Engram. So they have a nice balance there, but we'll see what they do. But as of right now, man, it seems like Waddle's the wide receiver 1, but I think it's wide receiver 1A, 1B with Courtland Sutton. Is he a wide receiver 1 for fantasy football? To be completely honest, maybe he finishes there in the same way that Courtland Sutton finished as a wide receiver 1 last year, but he didn't perform like it. You know what I mean? In my mind, and what I preach all the time is you need consistency out of your fantasy football players. Boom bust players don't do you any good. They could win you a week, but they could also lose you a week. And I'd rather have a lot of people who are consistently good and you know what to expect out of them. Because if they have 2 busts in a row, are you going to start them that third week? In that third week, they probably go off. But if you don't trust that they're going to give you those points and they already earned you a couple of losses, they're just less valuable than someone who posts similar fantasy numbers that did it on a more consistent basis. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's why we have our consistency rankings that we'll do videos on this channel, and I'll get you access to all of that data. Don't you worry a little bit about that. But yeah, so I would say in terms of redraft, as of right now, if nothing changes at all, I would view Waddle as a high-end wide receiver 2. I would view Sutton as a high-end wide receiver 3, probably. And Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, you can't touch. And they will both have good weeks, but they will both have a lot of bad weeks. And we'll see what happens. I mean, the running backs will still get theirs. They are still a run-first team. We'll see what happens with this. But let's take a look at Miami, because, boy, what a wasteland. It's almost not worth talking about just because they have to make some moves. This can't be the roster they go in with, right? But let's just talk about what it is now. And by the way, I guess I didn't say anything about Bo Nix, but Bo Nix gets better, right? Better receivers to throw to. Bo Nix gets better. The team as a whole is better. The offense is better. More chances for scoring. All of the above. And we'll still get into dynasty trade value in a second. I'm just trying to do a blanket value assessment for these players for the 2026 season. But yeah, take a look. Take a look at the Dolphins. Obviously, we've seen a lot of moves go on, so you may have missed some. Tutu Atwell's here. I like him as a player, but man, to trust him to do it on a consistent basis is not it. Jalen Tolbert's someone who I thought coming out of college could be a MVS type of player. Someone who could solidify himself as a okay wide receiver 3, and he has not done that. He has not done that whatsoever. So to say that he is potentially the wide receiver 2 on this team is not great. Malik Washington, however, I'm a fan of. I like Malik Washington quite a bit. I might be biased because he was on my fantasy team, my college fantasy team, a couple of years ago when he had that one season at Virginia. He was great. He was outstanding, right? But he's a player who can do a lot and should have been asked to do more last season, in my humble opinion. I think he could have been used more in the quote-unquote Tyreek Hill role last year after Tyreek Hill got hurt. I thought he could do that, but they didn't really ask him to do it consistently. Will he be asked to do it this year? Maybe. But the one thing that is absolutely for sure is the Dolphins need to draft somebody. They need to sign somebody. They need to call somebody. They need to hug somebody. They need to do something because they do not have much talent here. If we're running into the season with this roster, Malik Washington's probably a wide receiver 3, but I'm not going to trust this. I'm a Packer fan, massive Malik Willis fan. He's very, very clearly has been the best quarterback on the Packers the past 2 years. The Dolphins, though, they're not going to be a high-powered passing offense. Like, that's not what they're going to try to be. And that's why they got rid of Jaylen Waddle, right? They brought in draft picks, cleared cap space, and they want to build the offensive line. They want to build the short passing game. And Malik Willis is damn good at passing downfield when the play action can suck up that coverage, right? So look for them to add somebody here in the draft, probably with their first round pick. I'm not sure, or with that 30th overall pick. But that player is probably going to be their top receiving option, and they probably will be a wide receiver 3 next year. Like, I'm probably not going to go all in on them, but depending on who gets drafted there, they're probably a first round pick in Dynasty fantasy football just because of the role they're going to have and that instant gratification, right? People want players who will perform for them right away. It's tough to draft somebody with the idea that they're going to perform in 2028. Who cares? But we shall see with that. We'll have a lot more content in videos after the draft when we can really project the fantasy value of some of these people. But tell me, Zach, what would you be trading some of these players for right now? So let's take a jump back to the Broncos, because honestly, would I be trading for any of these Dolphins? I'm still trading for Malik Willis. I still believe in him, but am I trading for Malik Washington after this news? If I can get him cheap, then fine. You know what I mean? If I can get him for a 4th round draft pick, cool. If it's a late 3rd round draft pick, fine. I could be convinced of that, but anything substantial, you're not trading for these people. And hey, Devon Achane's still going to be Devon Achane. I don't think anything with Waddle and the wide receiver talent here changes that, just because I think of how good Malik Willis is and how much better this offense could be as a run-first offense. Zach Kuntz is a good blocker. Greg Dulcich can block and catch the ball a little bit. So we'll see what they do there. But let's head back to Denver and talk about the Dynasty fantasy value of some of these people. So, like I said, I think Waddle is the wide receiver 1 here. In my mind, he's the most talented out of them. And he's a little bit younger, right? He's 27. I do believe, let me check. I think Sutton's 30. Yeah. So 3-year different there. Sutton's a good player, but I think Waddle's a little bit better. I think you could trade Waddle. Trading for him, trading him away. I think pretty good value as a 1st round draft pick this year. I think a 2026 1st round draft pick is fair for Jaylen Waddle. Now, do I think a 2027 1st round draft pick is fair for him? No, I really don't. If I am playing Dynasty, I am doing what I can. I'm trying to compete this year. Make no mistakes about it. I'm never trying to have an off year, a bye year, a rebuild year. We don't do rebuilds. We retool, we go, right? But if I can grab draft picks in the 2027 draft, brother, like this draft class for 2027 is head, shoulders, knees, and toes better than what the 2026 draft class has going on. Like, it's so much better. So would I trade Jaylen Waddle for a 2027 draft pick? No, I would not. or would I trade him away for a 2027? Yes. Would I trade my own 2027 away for Waddle? I don't think so, unless it's the missing piece to get me over the top. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I'd be much more willing to trade away a 2nd this year, a 2nd next year for Waddle. But yeah, that 2027 draft class is legit. So 2026 1st rounder for Jaylen Waddle feels good for both sides. I think that's even value. So obviously work them a little bit if you are wanting a sweeter deal for yourself. Sutton is very tough for me because he's 30. I think he has good football left. I think he's a good football player. Now, if he doesn't get moved on from the Broncos, I don't think this is a great year for him, right? I don't think he's that good of a I don't think he's going to be much better than a wide receiver 2 consistently. So, let's just say he has one season of a wide receiver 2 value, and then he's 31, and then he gets moved to another team and probably isn't going to be the number one guy there either, or at least very clearly head and shoulders above the next guy. So I think the future for Courtland Sutton with this move is set up to not be that great, to be honest, for Dynasty fantasy football. So, like, would I trade away a second round draft pick to get Courtland Sutton, or would I trade Courtland Sutton for a second round draft pick? Again, a second rounder in 2026 is less valuable than a second rounder in 2027. With that being said, if I have Courtland Sutton and someone's giving me a second round draft pick, I think I accept it. Regardless of year, I think I would accept that. So with that in mind, would I trade away a second rounder to get him? I don't think so. Because I'm not trading a second rounder for a player that I don't think is the missing key to win me this year. Like, I don't think he is going to win me this season. So is he going to win me next season? A lot of things have to go right for that to be the case. So I don't think so. If you can get a second round pick for Courtland Sutton, you go ahead and do so. If it's 2/3, that makes things a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult. Then, I mean, that's where the value is, right? He's between a second and 2/3. And I do feel a second round pick is probably more valuable than 2/3, depending on league size, where the draft pick is, yada, yada. If one of the thirds is in the 2027 draft class, maybe I would do it. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not trading anything substantial to go get Courtland Sutton, to be completely honest. I'm just not. Now, this is where it gets very, very difficult for me. Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, I have both of these guys on fantasy teams. I traded away Franklin in one of them this past year. But I've been scouting the Broncos and Sean Payton for a long time. Obviously together for less time. But I know the Sean Payton offense. I know how he thinks. I know his system. I know it pretty well. So I've been very on board with Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant when they both were, chosen in their respective seasons. I got to tell you, I'm not that high on Troy Franklin going forward. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm much higher on Pat Bryant because of his blocking ability. And I know Sean Payton is going to reward that, right? I mean, we've seen him reward little Jordan Humphrey, who by all accounts is big as fuck and can block, but he can't do much else. And he still catches touchdowns, right? Pat Bryant can be a much, much, much better football player than little Jordan Humphrey. He can do a lot more as a receiver, and he can block just as well. So I think I value Pat Bryant more than Troy Franklin, but I think Troy Franklin's trade value is higher than Pat Bryant's. Regardless, I would put them both around a second round pick, a 2026 second round pick. That's where I would value both of these guys. If I'm trying to acquire one of them, I would try to acquire Pat Bryant. He obviously has another year on his contract than Troy Franklin as well, which is great, right? The longer he can play for Sean Payton on a cheap contract is usually a good thing. Yeah, if I own both of them, I think I'm trying to trade away Troy Franklin though, because I do think most people value Troy Franklin higher. Let me check something. If you haven't used Keep Trade Cut, they're fine. They're pretty good. It's good. It's good to see because it takes all the data from other people, right? That other people plug in for them, and they gather all this data and give you a trade value based on what other people are choosing. So, would I take their number that they're about to give us as my value? No, but it's good for me to say, hey, Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant and see who people value higher. So yeah, people value Troy Franklin slightly higher, not much though. They're about the same. And this arbitrary number that means absolutely nothing, I would assume is close to a second round draft pick because that's what I would say. Mid-second. Yeah. I think they're about second round picks. Would I trade away a second round pick to go get Troy Franklin? No. Would I trade a second round pick to go get Pat Bryant? Probably not. Like, I think I like Pat Bryant more than Troy Franklin. I still think I like Pat Bryant going forward, but would I trade a second round pick straight up for Pat Bryant? I don't think so. I don't think so. I would get more creative than that. I would do a third and a receiver that is okay. You know what I mean? I would do a third or a tight end or a running back that I don't really need on my football team. Maybe even an older player. Like if someone really likes Zach Ertz, and honestly, Zach Ertz is going to be good this year for fantasy wherever he ends up and once he gets healthy. So let's just say it's week 1. Zach Ertz is healthy. He's playing football. I would trade a third round pick and Zach Ertz to go get Pat Bryant. I would do that. You know what I mean? Let's see how far off. I'm going to guess this trade calculator later hates that trade. But that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, honestly, it's about the same. Yeah, I think this is a fine trade to do something like this. Obviously, I mean, maybe somebody will trade for Zach Ertz right now. I think it would be a tough sell to get Zach Ertz. Who's another player who's older? Marshawn Lloyd. This is an older player, but this is someone who is non-existent. Marshawn Lloyd, I think, is a very good football player who has not been given the chance by God to play football. Like, he is constantly hurt. Every injury under the sun that can be in the lower body or even the side. I believe it was appendicitis at one point as well. Marshawn Lloyd, if he can get on a football field, I think will be very good for the Packers. At some point, you have to cut ties, and at some point, the Packers have to legitimately go and get a running back too, which I think they'll do in this draft. So if I have Marshawn Lloyd, I don't mind trading him away, especially if I go Marshawn Lloyd and a third for Pat Bryant. I would be okay with that. I would definitely try to do a fourth rounder first, but I don't hate this, to be honest. So that's where I'm at. Jaylen Waddle is the most valuable of the bunch. I would trade a 2026 first round pick for him or getting that, trading him away. I think that's fine. Courtland Sutton's closer to a second rounder. And then Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant are both second rounders as well. Pat Bryant, I think, is more valuable than Troy Franklin. And Bo Nix, I think, goes up in value, but not that much. He's still a system quarterback. He's still going to play the Sean Payton system. And I think this improves the offense overall. But I don't think the quarterback numbers will be that much better as a result. I think he's a fine quarterback. He'll continue to do fine things. And to be honest, I think it helps the running backs because if they are in scoring position more often, then they're going to run the football in the red zone. And I think J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey will both benefit as a result. And that's that. That is that. So definitely ask questions in the comments below. Or, about Jaylen Waddle, about the Broncos, about the Dolphins, about anything. Definitely ask any fantasy football questions you have below because I'm going to be looking at them. I'm going to be answering every single one of them. Please, if you heard anything useful, if you got anything useful from this video, please subscribe. Please give it a like. It'll really help us out a lot. You'll start seeing other people than just myself on this channel. But we want to grow this fantasy football channel and fantasy football community a bunch before the season starts. If we can get this channel monetized, full transparency, if we can get this channel built up enough to monetize it before the season, we will have content here every single day of the week during the fantasy football season. You can bet that for the off season starting next week, I'm toying around with the idea of having a weekly schedule here. So please let me know what you think. I'm thinking maybe a Tuesday, Thursday schedule because that would mean we have the Flurry Sports podcast on the main channel on Monday. We would have a fantasy video here on Tuesday. We have Lombardi sweep or another thing on the main channel on Wednesdays. Again, another fantasy video here on Thursdays. And then Fridays, who knows? You know what I mean? You'll still have a bunch of content then. Please let me know what kind of fantasy content you want to see. If you want more Dynasty content, let me know. If you want draft analysis, like previews of some of these players leading up to the draft, let me know, because myself and other people at Flurry are currently writing a bunch of draft profiles at flurrysports.org. Go check them out. And they're good for fantasy. They're good for betting. They're good for just NFL fans in general. Enough talking by me. Let's get out of here. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for staying to the end. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.